A dictator who claimed to invent the hamburger, while millions starved. We'll peel back the layers of Kim Jong-il's bizarre world, where lies fed the nation, fear ruled daily life, and the most shocking truth hid behind his golden gates. If you were forced to believe one absurd myth, like your leader controlling the weather, would you play along or risk punishment? Comment below. Imagine a world where a leader isn't just admired, he's worshipped like a god. In North Korea, Kim Jong-il wasn't presented as a man at all, but a supernatural figure born under a double rainbow with the heavens themselves celebrating his arrival. Schools taught children to sing his praises before they could even write their own names. Propaganda erased the line between myth and reality. It worked because when every voice repeats the same story, doubt feels impossible. Question everything you're told. That's the first defense against manipulation. What if someone told you their very first game of golf included 11 holes in one? Kim Jong-il did exactly that, and state media expected everyone to believe it. He supposedly invented the hamburger, controlled the weather with his mood, and never once needed the bathroom. Absurd? Absolutely. But in a nation without free speech, laughing at such claims could mean prison, or worse. When lies are enforced by fear, they become deadly serious. Always test extraordinary claims with evidence. Credibility requires proof, not power. Picture waking up each day to the same blaring propaganda songs, neighbors watching your every move, and portraits of the Kim family staring from every wall. In North Korea, life under Kim Jong-il wasn't just restricted, it was choreographed. Citizens lined up for rations, whispered in fear, and pretended loyalty even in private. The smallest slip, even a misplaced photo frame, could brand a family as traitors. When survival means silence, truth becomes the rarest currency. Guard your freedom to speak. It's more fragile than you think. Here's a chilling contrast. While Kim Jong-il dined on lobster, millions of his people starved. The arduous march, North Korea's devastating famine, claimed up to 3 million lives. Families boiled grass to survive, children fainted in classrooms, and entire villages disappeared. Yet official propaganda insisted citizens were thriving under his genius leadership. Hunger was hidden beneath slogans. Famine didn't just kill bodies, it killed hope. When leadership ignores suffering, tragedy multiplies. Never underestimate the power of accountability. It's the line between life and death. Imagine convoys of Mercedes limousines speeding through a country where bicycles were rare. Kim Jong-il's palaces overflowed with chandeliers, fine cognac, and a personal movie library of more than 20,000 films. He flew in sushi chefs from Japan, while North Korean citizens dug roots from frozen ground. The wealth gap wasn't a crack, it was a canyon. Extravagance became his shield, a way to prove divinity while hiding corruption. Real leadership serves people, not appetites. True power is measured by sacrifice, not indulgence. From the first day in school, North Korean children were taught to draw Kim Jong-il's face before their own families. Radio stations played only state-approved music. Textbooks described him as a genius military strategist, even though he had never served in combat. Repetition replaced reality. When a story is told enough times, it becomes memory, even if it's false. Propaganda didn't just spread lies, it built cages inside minds. To resist manipulation, keep learning from diverse voices. A narrow lens distorts truth. Strange truth. The man who isolated his nation was obsessed with foreign luxuries. Kim Jong-il adored Hollywood films, especially James Bond and Godzilla. He guzzled French cognac by the crate and imported rare delicacies from Europe and Asia. Behind the sealed borders, he lived like an international playboy, while citizens were banned from even owning a foreign magazine. Hypocrisy was his trademark. Obsession with the outside world revealed what propaganda denied. he knew his nation lagged far behind. Learn from this paradox. Secrecy always exposes insecurity. In 1978, North Korean agents kidnapped a South Korean actress and her ex-husband, a famous film director. Their crime? Refusing to glorify Kim Jong-il on screen. Forced into Pyongyang, they made propaganda films under his watchful eye. Kim craved global recognition as a filmmaker, not just a dictator. This was more than abduction. It was cultural theft. He weaponized art to polish his myth. Creativity thrives on freedom, never coercion. If someone controls your stories, they control your future. Guard your voice fiercely. Kim Jong-il's favorite tool wasn't diplomacy, it was terror. He poured billions into nuclear weapons programs while power outages left cities in darkness. Every missile test was staged like a sacred event, with citizens forced to cheer. Fear became his currency, traded both inside and outside North Korea. Neighbors like Japan and South Korea never knew if the next launch was a test or the beginning of war. When leaders prioritize weapons over welfare, humanity pays the price. Security without compassion is just intimidation. Before we dive deeper into the most bizarre and terrifying truths, here's a quick pause. If uncovering the hidden side of history's strangest leaders fascinates you, make sure you hit subscribe. That way, you'll never miss the next deep dive into the secrets most people never hear about. Knowledge is power, and sometimes survival. Kim Jong-il trusted no one, not even his own doctors. He used body doubles for public appearances, maintained secret tunnels beneath his palaces, and reportedly had more than a dozen fortified bunkers scattered across the country. Even his food was tested for poison before reaching his plate. Paranoia became a lifestyle, and fear isolated him from reality. Ironically, the man who demanded absolute loyalty lived in constant suspicion. Leadership without trust collapses into isolation. True strength rests on connection, not cages. Imagine a world with no internet, no foreign TV, not even a newspaper from the next country. Under Kim Jong-il, North Korea sealed its borders against knowledge itself. Radios were locked to government frequencies, and owning an unapproved book could land someone in prison. Truth wasn't just censored, it was amputated. Isolation kept citizens in a manufactured reality where Kim remained unquestioned. Control of information is control of thought. Protect your access to diverse knowledge, because ignorance isn't safety, it's control. In classrooms, children recited stories of Kim Jong-il's supernatural talents. He wrote hundreds of operas, mastered multiple sports, and solved unsolvable problems. These weren't history lessons, they were fairy tales with consequences. Generations grew up confusing propaganda with identity. Lies became national DNA. Once embedded, falsehoods linger long after a leader dies. The takeaway? Question the stories you inherit, even the ones wrapped in tradition. Blind repetition builds cages. Honest reflection builds strength. Even in the darkest regimes, sparks of defiance appear. Some North Koreans risked everything to escape across rivers into China, guided only by rumor and desperation. Others secretly tuned into smuggled radios, hearing voices from a world they were told didn't exist. These acts were small on the surface, but monumental in meaning. Defiance was survival of the spirit. Courage under tyranny doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. When truth is outlawed, even listening becomes rebellion. Protect your right to seek truth. Never take it lightly. But defiance came at a terrible price. In North Korea, punishment wasn't limited to the guilty. It stretched across 3 generations. A child could be born into a prison camp because of a grandparent's disobedience. Families vanished overnight, condemned to starvation, hard labor, and torture. The message was clear. One person's courage could doom an entire bloodline. Fear was the ultimate silencer. True freedom requires protection not just for individuals, but for families. Without it, bravery becomes a death sentence. In December 2011, state media announced that Kim Jong-il had died of a heart attack on a train. But details were scarce, and rumors swirled. Was it stress, illness, or even assassination? Citizens were filmed weeping uncontrollably, but many were performing grief out of fear. Behind the cameras, confusion reigned. A man who demanded immortality was suddenly gone. His death exposed the fragility of his entire myth. Power built on fear dies quickly. Remember, leadership that cannot outlive the leader was never true strength. Outside North Korea, Kim Jong-il became a figure of ridicule, lampooned in films, mocked for his eccentricities, and caricatured as a comic villain. Yet behind the jokes was genuine fear. Intelligence agencies knew he commanded nuclear weapons and ruthless prisons. He was both punchline and threat, absurd and deadly. That duality made him one of the strangest leaders in modern history. Perception matters. Dismissing danger as comedy blinds us to real risks. Always separate satire from reality, because laughter doesn't neutralize power. Kim Jong-il's life revealed a dangerous truth. Myths can outlive the men who create them. Official records still present him as a flawless genius, even though famine, fear, and failure defined his rule. Reality was hidden behind layers of forced devotion and carefully crafted lies. The greater the gap between image and truth, the harder it is to heal afterward. That's North Korea's burden today. For all of us, the lesson is simple. Question every narrative. The bigger the myth, the deeper the shadow. When Kim Jong-il died, his son inherited more than a country. He inherited an empire of lies. Kim Jong-un stepped into power with the same myths recycled, the same propaganda machine intact, and the same obsession with fear and control. The system didn't collapse, it adapted. Tyranny is easier to pass down than freedom. That's the horrifying truth of dynastic dictatorships. If history repeats, it's because no one broke the cycle. Remember, freedom must be renewed each generation, or it fades into silence. Kim Jong-il's rule was a paradox of absurd myths and devastating realities. He claimed to control the weather, but couldn't control famine. He built palaces while villages starved. He demanded worship, yet lived in fear of his own people. His story is a stark reminder. Unchecked power twists truth into fantasy, and fantasy into tragedy. The horrifying truth isn't just about Kim. It's about how silence and fear allow myths to replace reality. And that lesson, more than anything, must not be forgotten. This content is for informational purposes only. It is not professional advice. Please consult a qualified expert as needed.